The first series of 2022 is brought to you with the kind support of Herd Capital, a Chicago-based asset manager that invests in public equities in the technology, media, telecommunications, financial and industrial sectors. The firm was founded in 2011 and manages assets via a long-short fund and a long-only fund. Our next guest had a vision for an industry with a more balanced pipeline, a more fertile career network, and opportunity for more. Hear how through grit and ingenuity, she made it a reality. And she is just getting started. I'm Aoife Devitt, and welcome to the 50 Faces podcast, a podcast committed to revealing the richness and diversity of the world of investment by focusing on its people and their stories. I'm joined today by Seema Hingorani, the founder and chair of Girls Who Invest and a managing director at Morgan Stanley Investment Management. She previously was CIO at her own hedge fund and chief investment officer of New York City Retirement Systems, where she spent 4 years following a long career in asset management. She was recently the recipient of the French Legion of Honor. Welcome, Seema. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Well, you've had an extraordinary career so far. Cycling through the private and public sectors, you founded a successful nonprofit with a mission to address the gender imbalance in investment management, and recently did a podcast with AIM in which you were interviewed by my friend Susan Soh. And as that podcast was such an excellent depiction of your career journey, we're going to link to it in the show notes. We're not going to repeat the content here, but I would like to peel back some of the many layers that were in that. And starting with your career journey first, since we normally talk about that on this podcast. But in your case, it's been so varied. What were some of the highs and lows of your career so far, would you say?
Well, the highs certainly have been having the privilege of managing the New York City pension fund portfolios. You know, this is going back 2010 to 2014 when I was there, but I was CIO for the latter part of my time there. And that kind of responsibility and that kind of privilege of helping teachers and firefighters and police officers for their retirement security, that was pretty amazing. And, you know, despite all the politics involved in a job like that, as you know, well, it was some of the best 4 years of my career. So that's definitely one of them. I would say just even being in the industry, coming from a time when I thought I wanted to be a corporate lawyer and just having been able to, luckily enough, bump into this industry, I felt like, which then led me to not go to law school, led me to go to business school and become an investor and not a lawyer. And so I started out my career as a media technology investor at large mutual fund companies, so T. Rowe Price, and then afterward went on to large hedge funds. And all of that time for me was an incredible experience, just learning a lot about businesses, about markets. To me, it was being an investor at those funds in my early days of my career. I felt like I was just going into work every day and solving a puzzle, which to me was so exciting. I was learning every day. That's one of the great things I think about our business is if you're intellectually curious, it's such an incredible career path. And then, you know, look, when I started up my own hedge fund, that was really hard. Along the way, as you know, throughout my career, I've had these entrepreneurial ventures that I focused on, and which ultimately led me to founding Girls Who Invest and being an entrepreneur there, founding 7 Step Capital, being an entrepreneur there. I guess it took me a long time to realize I am an entrepreneur, but along the way, trying to do that, it was really hard. While it's hard for anyone to raise capital, it's what I learned along the way, being on both sides of the table as an asset owner and as an asset manager. It's especially hard for women to raise capital. And we've talked about that before. But that was not easy to do, but that is something I really wanted to do. And so I was at it for a while, and it was just hard to get to that critical mass. As a startup fund, you know, there's a certain critical mass that you need in order to get your business off the ground and have it be sustainable long term. And so we ended up winding that down, myself and my partner. And of course, I still love the business, so I remained in the business, but I started realizing for myself personally that I just didn't enjoy picking stocks day to day in a portfolio anymore, which was what led me to looking for opportunities as a director of research. And that sort of led me off into that direction. And then I was focused on building businesses and building teams. And that kind of led me throughout the rest of my career to where I am now. And I just think I wouldn't change a thing though. Starting up businesses, it was an incredible opportunity that I felt I had. And yet it was really hard. And I learned a lot along the way for sure of what to do, what not to do. And so I think in my current position now, as I look to invest in women and minorities who want to start their own funds, I have that experience. And so that I think is just helpful.
It's so interesting that you picked first as a highlight the time you spent at a public fund, because I think, especially when people come to look at their career options, it's often the case that those positions, they may not have the fattest paycheck, but they often have experience and abundance. And it's interesting that you saw that. And I think increasingly that we need to encourage young people interested in investing that public service is actually a great place to learn the ropes.
I totally agree with you. And I encourage everybody, particularly the women that go through my Girls Who Invest program, to pursue those opportunities for the reasons you just described. And I tell all my friends, frankly, and I did, especially when I worked at the New York City Pension Fund, basically saying, hey, look, everybody should do this at some point in their lives because it's so important. Our cities, our states in the US need so much help. So many of the funds are underfunded. I mean, better funded now than they were 10 years ago, but still underfunded pensions. And we know that certain cities have gotten themselves into trouble because of that. And it's a serious issue across the country. And there's so much great talent in our business. And I did my very best to try to encourage some of my friends to go do it. And actually one or two did do it, which I was thrilled about. But yeah, I agree. I think it's such an important job and it makes such a direct impact on people's lives in such a meaningful way. And yeah, so I continue to highly recommend it. I try to encourage as many people as I can to do it at some point in their lives, for sure.
Can you just refresh us as to the genesis of Girls Who Invest? Because it's such an important organization, and evidence of that being, I suppose, how it has been replicated now around the world, which is wonderful to see that that model is something that gets traction. What was the genesis of the idea?
Yeah, so if I could think about another highlight in my career, it would be Girls Who Invest, which is something I never intended to start a nonprofit called Girls Who Invest. And it goes back to my time at the City of New York in the pension fund and sitting in that seat as chief investment officer. So back in 2013, 2014, when I was in that seat managing a $160 billion portfolio, every asset manager around the world then who wanted to manage New York City's money was then coming to meet with me. We're the fourth largest public plan in the country. And so significant investor, significant client. And so that made sense. It was very fun for me because I love investing. I love being an investor. So now I'm investing in private equity deals and infrastructure deals and real estate deals. But it was there that I was shocked that how every time I got to anyone's organizational chart, I'd look down at it and see few, if any, women on their investment teams. And I literally was shocked. And maybe I shouldn't have been, but I was. And I thought, wow, I knew there were a few women, particularly those that look like me, in my part of the investment universe. So public equities, hedge funds. But I didn't realize how bad it was everywhere until I did sit in that seat and saw those organizational charts. And so, of course, I asked every single person, what is going on? And every single person said, Seema, the reason why is because we don't get resumes from women. And I thought, we've heard that so many times before. And so I said, you know what? Maybe that's true. Maybe we do have a pipeline problem. And I said to them, though, you know what? We can fix that. Hence Girls Who Invest. But at that time, not intending ever at all to even think about something called Girls Who Invest when I was talking to them. But so while I described that being an issue and, okay, here's how we can fix that, let's focus on the pipeline, I also wanted to have the other conversation with a lot of the leadership of our industry, which was, let's have this other part of the conversation too, though. And what I said to them is no judging, no blaming, but there's still firms out there in our business that have cultures that are not so welcoming to women. So I think we need to have that conversation too. Because that way, then we will tackle it from both ends. We'll focus on the pipeline. We'll focus on the women currently in the industry. And then we'll make a lot more progress a lot faster in terms of diversifying our investment teams, which is what we all know and believe, I think, because we've all read the same research, that more gender diverse teams get better outcomes. So of course, then when you're trying to make really hard investment decisions, you would want to have that diversity around the table. And of course, they all agreed with that. Absolutely, Seema. We just can't find them. And so, of course, then any keynote I ever made or any panel I was ever on in that seat, there would be hundreds of asset managers in these audiences. And I would just say very loudly, We have a serious problem in our industry. You tell me you can't find the women, so I will make you a deal. I'll go find them, and then you hire them. At that point, of course, they looked at me and said, what? I said, yeah, that's the deal. So, when I left that job, which, as you know, is on a 4-year political cycle, that was June of 2014, I wrote an op-ed article. And I had not ever written an op-ed article before, but I just felt compelled to do it because I wanted to get a conversation around this topic out there much more broadly. And so Bloomberg publishes that article in September 2014. And you might remember in that I talked about here are the issues, here are the challenges, but what can we do about it? And that's literally where I threw out this idea. Why don't we have something called Girls Who Invest? And we could go younger. We could start young. We could go to high schools, colleges, build this massive pipeline of amazingly talented young women who we will train, mentor, educate, prepare, guide, send them off into the industry, never let them feel left alone so that they'll become more senior. They'll help change a lot of these cultures and they'll manage a lot of the money. And then, of course, I thought I was done. And then I was going to go back to my old life, the private sector, because I love investing in the markets, but I got overwhelmed with the response. In fact, Bloomberg told me that my article was the 4th most read article on the Bloomberg terminal that day, and it was an op-ed. And so I got emails from men and women in our business, college professors, business school professors saying, Seema, you got to do this. And I thought, whoa, you want me to start Girls Who Invest? It's so not what I was planning to do, but I'm clearly passionate about it. So let me try to figure it out. And literally that's where I met a lot of these people that emailed me and had all these conversations and realized after all of these, many conversations, I realized, wow, while there are great organizations that are already out there doing great work to help get more minorities into our business, they were doing it much more broadly, right? Sales, trading, research, investment banking. And so what I realized even after talking to them, so this is the great organizations like SEO and Twigo and others, I realized no one was focused just on women and no one was focused just on asset management. I, of course, knew that was a serious problem in our industry. And of course, that's where I was most passionate. So having never done this before in my life, I woke up with a 10-page business plan and a board 6 years ago. And here we are. And what we've done, it's gone way beyond my expectations.
It is an extraordinary program and so needed, so very needed. Just when you speak about the pitch books, I recently saw a pitch book that genuinely did have full diversity of gender at the senior levels as well as the middle levels. And actually, I can't really explain the level of emotion I felt reading that. It was almost like, well, this is how it should be. And I just had to pause on looking at that book and then I went on. But I stopped, I paused because it is so unusual. Where do you think we are doing if you were to give a scorecard? Looking at your own program and maybe the industry as a whole, starting at your own program. I know you've said it's beyond your wildest dreams, but were there setbacks perhaps that you didn't expect? Any kind of pushback that you didn't expect? And is the pipeline where you want it to be now?
Yeah, so there was definitely pushback in the beginning because talking about things is a lot easier than actually doing things, right? And so in the early days, I had to do some major convincing to certain firms out there in our business to start college internship programs. Like so many of the firms in our industry didn't have college internship programs before I started Girls Who Invest. And my program was designed to be focused, at least to start, with college women because I wanted to go younger. I knew we needed to go younger to build this pipeline because there's so much incredible talent. I just knew that it was out there, right? And I just felt like a lot of our industry didn't want to do the work to go do that, right? They would go interview students from 4 schools or go to 2-year investment banking programs, and that's how they source their talent. Well, of course, in hearing that, I'm thinking, well, no wonder you're having a problem with diversity if that's all you're doing. So I'm going to go find women across the entire country because I know they're out there and I'm going to find these gems, which we've done, right? So I'm thinking the talent's out there. It's just what I found is a lot of the firms weren't set up to do it. They didn't want to take the time and energy and resources to train younger talent. They want to get them further down the road. And I'm like, well, you're going to miss out then on all this great opportunity if you do that. So I'm going to go younger. I'm going to focus on women who are sophomores in college here in the US to start. And then I'm going to take English majors and biology majors and philosophy majors and chemistry majors and business and finance majors. So I was a psychology philosophy major undergrad. I never took a finance or accounting class ever until I got to business school, and I love being an investor. So we were going to do that by design. We were also going to get the most incredible diversity that I could find, right, in terms of ethnic diversity, socioeconomic diversity. Being the daughter of Indian immigrants, when my parents came to the U.S. over 50 years ago with $8 in their pocket, this was not going to be a program about all the privileged young women in our country. And it's also one of the reasons why I made the program free in the beginning. Because again, I didn't want money to ever be an issue for any young woman. And so with that in mind, though, I had to convince some firms to do this with me. And basically what I said to them is, look, I'm taking 2 years out of my career to do this because it's that important to me. I think it's that important to our industry. And I know you feel the same way. So I get it that you haven't had an internship program before, but now you need to do that and I will help you. And so that's what we did. But it was not easy in those early days. Certainly several firms did step up right away. They saw the vision. I'm so grateful for them. They're still very much partners of Girls Who Invest in a huge way. And I'll always remember that. But it took some more convincing for some of these other firms. But I knew, though, once I got these women into the doors, they were going to impress everybody. I just knew it. We were going to make sure of that clearly with the training that we did and how we prepared them and the confidence building exercises and trainings that we did as well, in addition to the technical skills training, that they would go off into these firms and they would impress everybody. And then the word would get out, you need to go hire a Girls Invest Scholar. And then we'd have a wait list of firms wanting to hire women. And that's actually what's happened. As of the second year of my program in 2017, we had firms really coming to us and saying, please, can we partner with you? It was incredible. And now we have 110 partner firms around the world hiring our women, which is amazing. So in 6 years, because we have online programs as well, in addition to our 10-week flagship program, which is the 4 weeks of training followed by a guaranteed 6-week paid internship at a leading asset manager in the US, the UK, and Canada. In 6 years, we've put about 1,000 women through these programs. And about 70% of them are staying in the investment business and getting multiple offers from some of the great firms out there. We right now have full-time on investment teams in 5 years, 150 Girls Who Invest Scholars in 5 years. So we're going to continue to flood the system with this incredible talent. That is all by design. We're building this incredible community with these women, for these women, around these women. We've got alumni now. We have an alumni council. We're building out this great alumni community. We're building into the system continuing education type content and programming, right? Because I would think I'd be a massive failure if we just sent these women off, trained them up, sent them off into the industry, and they all left, right? That would be terrible. And so we've got in place these plans and already started to do some of this programming to make sure that we're there with them as they experience and try to navigate all the different areas of our business as you go further out in your career. Because we know well what you experience when you're out of school, 5 years out, 10 years out, 15 years out is very different. And so we want to be there with them to make sure that we fundamentally change the way our industry looks today as far as the investment teams and the senior leadership of our industry. So I'm very encouraged. I've been very encouraged by what I've seen in the last 6 years with the pipelines coming in the door. Now, the issue is that we need to focus on, and I'm having lots of great conversations. And in fact, one of the things I'm working on at Morgan Stanley Investment Management is it's the then what, right? Now you've recruited this great diversity in and onto your investment teams in particular. And our industry right now still has a tough time with the then what. Managing talent that looks the same is so much easier than managing diverse talent. It just is, which is why many organizations, they look the same, right, on their teams because it's easier, but that doesn't necessarily mean better, right? And we know that. And so what I get to do and what I get to help do at Morgan Stanley Investment Management on the senior leadership team is focus on that. Once we have this great diverse talent in the door, how do we make sure they know and believe deep down, because it's true, that they have the same access to the growth opportunities and promotional opportunities that any white man might have in our industry? And how do we help provide growth opportunities and promotional opportunities for all of our talent, right? Especially diverse talent, to make sure they feel that sense of belonging and to know that that's available to them, right? If they work hard and they succeed and they're performing well, all of that should be available to everybody and not just a certain few. And that piece, I think we as an industry need to do a much better job on. And I'm excited to work with my colleagues on this. I kicked off just this February, all virtually, a junior investment talent development program that I helped design. It's one of my day jobs, actually, which the way I thought about joining Morgan Stanley Investment Management, particularly around this, was, wow, I'm one of the biggest investment platforms in the world. I feel like I get to help do Girls Invest 2.0, which is that piece of it of the retention part of things. And again, not just for our great female investment talent, but for all of our talent, but particularly our diverse investment talent. And I really believe that we will figure out what that blueprint is to do that successfully. And then what I'd love to see happen is, we send that out to the rest of the industry and everybody does that kind of thing. And then, we all get to where we want to go, which is, in my view, the vision I threw out for Girls Who Invest, which, is what I call my 30 by 30 vision, to have 30% of the world's investable capital managed by women by 2030. Now, I don't know if we'll get there by 2030, but we're certainly making progress. And I think we're making good progress. Still a lot more to go. And we all need to continue to do this together. It's a massive industry effort. It had to be. It always has to be. I always knew that. And I'm encouraged by what we've done so far. But we got a long way to go still. And it's an aspirational goal, this 30 by 30 vision, clearly. But we're making progress. I had to put out a target. I knew we needed to put out targets. I feel like we as an industry need to continue to put out targets. And that's right now one of the things that I also feel good about what we're doing at Morgan Stanley Investment Management. It's not easy to do, right? And I give Dan Simkowitz, who hired me, a lot of credit for wanting to hire someone like me because he knew I wasn't going to come in and check any boxes around these things, right? And so ourselves right now, we're thinking through, okay, here are our numbers today. Here's what our investment team looks like. Here's what our other teams look like inside of our business. And okay, not the best diversity yet. Okay, not terrible, but not the best. So what are those numbers? Let's be transparent about it. And then what are we going to do to make them better? We've got all these programs. We have Girls Who Invest. Now we have the Rising Investors Program, which is what I call this Junior Investment Talent Development Program. We have that. We're doing these other things. We're taking real action. And then here are our targets. Here's where we want to go. And then we say to our clients, and now hold us accountable, right? That's what we should be doing. That's what the industry should be doing. And we want to take a leadership role at Morgan Stanley to do that. And so that, I think, is the piece where I'm really focused on now. I've got this great Girls Who Invest team. Great CEOs, hired a great team. That's continuing to move really well, really nicely. As founder, I'm chair of the board. I'm still very involved. But this piece right now that I'm focused on the senior leadership team of Morgan Stanley Investment Management is very important. And I'm very excited about it.
It's interesting because I was going to ask you exactly about that. The fact is that this industry, part of the reason it's so fascinating is it never stays the same. It's constantly changing. And whatever traits you may encourage your scholars to develop and to optimize their chances of success, those traits may have to shift as the industry shifts. And I'm thinking in particular around the shift to remote and hybrid working that we're now seeing, because one of the pieces you highlighted as being so key is the training piece. So how are you seeing that some of the traits maybe have to change now if we're in more of a hybrid environment? How do these scholars stay visible, get the training they need? Is it all on them? Is it on the employers? How has that changed things?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, particularly because, especially as I talk to my older brother, right? He's a scientist. And so everything about COVID, everything about this pandemic, everything about the Delta variant and all the other variants he's telling me about that are already brewing behind the scenes, I start thinking, gosh, I don't know what we go back to. We've all been talking about this hybrid environment where you're 2-3 days in the office, 2 days at home kind of thing. And I don't even know if that's it, right? Because I don't know how long this will go on. And I don't know how long this issue of these viruses, variants out there, and that's going to keep mutating, right? The virus itself is mutating. So we need to adapt to what's on the horizon. And I think we all need to be realistic as a society globally about what we're up against. And so this could go on for a long, long time, much longer than I think some of us might believe right now. And I'm hopeful that's not the case, but I'm just trying to learn and track the science the way my brother does and is trying to teach me. And so it's hard. It's been hard for our scholars just starting out their careers in a virtual environment. And I talk to so many of our alumni that, I don't have kids of my own. I have 3 beautiful nephews, my sister's boys, but I feel like these are my girls. And I try to spend 80 to 100 hours a year on the phone. I've been averaging out about that many hours a year on the phone with all of our alumni, as many as I can, because I want to keep helping and advise them and help them navigate certain situations. And this has been a big one, is they're out in our business right now, starting their careers all virtually. And it's been isolating, and I'm learning from them so it's helping me in my current job at Morgan Stanley to have this kind of sensitivity to these things. And so, yeah, you think about having them build relationships and friendships with their colleagues, which is everything about this industry, right? As you know, I've said before, to me, throughout my career, it's never been about the next stock trade for me. It's always been about the friendships and relationships. And that has certainly helped me throughout my career. And it's just, life's too short. And I just want to have really nice friends and nice people in my life. But it's definitely helped me in my career. And so how do you do that virtually as well? Now I've given them pointers on things they can do. And given that now we're all not traveling as much anymore, particularly the senior people, we're more at home, we're more local, that even capturing 15 minutes of their time, which might have seemed impossible before when we were all in the office because everybody was traveling elsewhere, it's a lot easier now, right? So you can set up these 15-minute coffee chats or 30-minute chats here and there, and that's helpful. Again, it's not ideal because it's not in person, right? There's nothing like being face-to-face with people. But we've evolved pretty nicely, I would say, over the last 18 months. I think we've all learned in our industry how to do this, how to do it better. And to the point of, I have a lot of CIO friends out there and at large public plans and university endowments and foundations. And some of them have actually hired external managers all virtually. When I talk to them about how do you do that with your due diligence processing, how does that work? And so they're doing it, right? And so we all have had to adapt. We're going to have to continue to adapt. And I think particularly for our younger investment talent out there, which is, again, where I'm focusing professionally at Morgan Stanley Investment Management with this Rising Investors program, because we're targeting folks on our investment teams globally across asset classes who are 0 to 6 years of work experience. For us, that's 160 investment professionals. So that's a lot of people that we're focused on. We want to think about constantly on how can we help them engage with their colleagues and build these kind of friendships and relationships, build that kind of community, and then learn from these people, right? Be mentored. And it's a huge challenge, as you mentioned. And we just have to do our best to get better and better and better at it. And I think one thing that I focused on with this program at Morgan Stanley is I created opportunities where these folks could work on projects together, right? So one of the tracks of this program is, I call it team projects. And so we're literally taking a private real estate investor with a public equity investor, with a public fixed income investor, and a private infrastructure investor. And they're the team. And then I come up with an investment topic on which that team, and they get a project sponsor, we call it, which is a mentor, so a more senior person. And that team then has to work on this investment topic for 2 months. And they have to do the due diligence. So one topic, and I try to make them more open-ended, but these are client-specific questions. So everything, it's not about doing busy work together. That doesn't apply to any of our client work, right? These are questions our clients are asking us. And then these are the topics that I'm coming up with. So one of them, put a team together, public and private markets team together. And I said, all right, you guys come up with your best China investment idea, public or private, open-ended topic. A lot of what we're trying to do with this program is to take these folks out of their zones day to day, right? To get them to think more creatively. So they grow professionally, but they also then, as they're collaborating with their colleagues across asset classes, they're sharing expertise, they're sharing learnings and knowledge. And again, it's just to get them out of their zones, but to work on projects together, which, as we know, that's what we do in our business, right? When we go into a client meeting, you got people from all different parts of the business. And so we're trying to have our younger talent grow up practicing a lot of these things. And hopefully, as they get to know their colleagues better, they're happier, they become loyal to the organization, but they become happier people and they want to stay at IMSM a long time, right? And we get at that retention issue. And then on top of that, ideally, as they're collaborating with each other and thinking more creatively themselves, becoming better investors themselves, that ideally that turns into better alpha generation over time for our clients. A tougher thing to measure, but we will measure that as well. And so again, though, think about what we just kicked off here, which is everyone's isolated. It's all virtual. Now we're creating more opportunities for them to engage with each other. They don't know their peers, right? Especially globally. We've got folks in Asia working on these teams. We've got folks in Europe working on these teams, in the US working on these teams. And then, when they make their presentation, this presentation is not only in front of, it's a PowerPoint, it's all virtual again, right? PowerPoint in front of their entire 160 group of peers, this group in the program, but they're presenting in front of their managers, their heads of investment teams, and our operating committee. So think about creating now growth opportunities and promotional opportunities for people who may not have been given these types of opportunities. We're trying to create that organically by doing this one thing called team projects. And so think about that. You're giving these chance for these younger folks to shine. And oh my God, have they shined? We've gone through teams 1 through 8 already. And the team projects been off the charts. And then they take that back, right? And then you got portfolio managers saying, oh my God, I listened to your presentation. That was really interesting. I think I need to focus on that idea, right? And so this is all beautiful stuff. And now you wish you could do that more in the office, but we've been able to do it virtually. So I just think we as an industry, we as leadership in our industry, we just need to be more creative. We need to continue to push ourselves to think more creatively. And it isn't just, I don't think, around doing trivia nights and game nights virtually. Yes, I think we need to do those things too, because the social element, we don't just all want to work all the time. We want to get to know each other socially, and however you can do that virtually, go for it. I mean, we managed somehow to do it through our Girls Invest program. Last summer, we had to turn our entire curriculum into a virtual one. This summer, again, virtual. Our professors were amazing. Our Girls Invest staff was incredible. Our scholars were incredible. They were able to do this somehow. And we did some of these social things. We had game nights, we did pizza nights, movie nights, and that kind of thing. We had TA office hours, right? There were other ways actually that through virtual you could do better than maybe you could do in the classroom. One of those being TA office hours. That was kind of interesting to learn about how that worked. But I just think, we need to be more creative. We need to understand that as we go maybe into this hybrid, right? 2-3 days a week in the office, those work from home. It may not be all at the same time. Some people have issues like my 84-year-old mom lives with me. I have MS. I need to be extra careful. So I may not go in 4 days a week. I may go in 2 days a week, right? We just need to make sure, though, as that happens, that those that are then in the office tend to then all go to lunch together, right? Now you're going to create opportunities for people to be excluded, which you would never intend before, right? You never want to happen before. But just by the very nature of being hybrid, where you have some people working from home and some people in the office, that could happen. And I can tell you, our leadership team at Morgan Stanley, we're spending a lot of time focused on that to make sure that does not happen. But I think we all need to be more attuned to these kinds of things because these are real things. And these are people's lives and their families, and everything's gotten all mixed up together and everything's blurring together. And you think about the mental health issues that have gone exponential in our country, given COVID and a lot of the George Floyd murder here in the US and Black Lives Matter movement and anti-Asian hate. I mean, there's so much going on in our country emotionally, and not just the pandemic, right? And so we just all need to be aware of this, and we need to try to listen more, I think, to our colleagues and engage more with each other as much as we can to make sure that people are not being left out. James Gorman, our CEO, talks a lot about this. Dan Simkowitz, my boss who runs investment management, we talk about belonging a lot, right? So inclusion is one thing, but to then take that one step even further to make people really feel like they belong at the table, they belong in this environment, they belong with their colleagues. That's a big thing. And it's not easy to do. And many people are just really not prepared to do it. So then get help, right? So let's just go find the professional help that we may need to help with some of our colleagues, whatever it is. I just feel like we just have to be much more open-minded, much more creative, much more empathetic, right? We need to bring back the humanity to everything we do, I feel like, more so than maybe ever before.
It's so important. I mean, I speak a lot about people being the change they wish to see. And I think that nothing personifies that more than the work you've done in this area, seeing the change that needed to happen, making it happen. And thank you so much for this nuanced discussion of the complexities involved. And I suppose the fact that we will never, probably even by 2030, get resolution to our satisfaction. But I think also if young people enter the industry with that type of expectation, perhaps that it's not perfect and it's going to be messy and it's going to be evolving. And I think it's thanks to people like you who are generously giving your time as mentors that we know that there can not only just be a resource for them, but also what you were doing is normalizing women in risk-taking roles. And I think that that type of small gesture is so important to offset the bias that we probably all internalize and carry with us. Now, Seema, it's been a wonderful discussion, and I will provide links to all of your programs as well as the op-ed in the show notes.
Thank you.
I think we've had a chance here to tease out some of the more complex and less well-known aspects of the challenge of increasing the gender diversity in our industry. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for your contribution to doing that.
Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to share some of these stories and share some of the work that I've been focused on for so many years now. I appreciate that very much. I think your point about just changing this dynamic for women, but also for the men in our industry, because with this particular program at Morgan Stanley, this Rising Investors program, this is a program for everybody, right? Men, women, everybody across our teams globally. And when you think about at its core, what this program hopefully will accomplish, what we want it to do is, if we do this right, and then all of these investment professionals stay at MSIM for a long time through their careers, it then won't be unusual for a white man to sit across the table from his Black woman colleague, from his Black male colleague, or his Indian woman colleague. It'll just be how business gets done. And that, I think, is how you fundamentally change cultures, particularly at a lot of these bigger firms, as going younger. I keep saying that a lot, but when you do that, and then these folks grow up that way in the industry, and that's how their careers evolve, that's, I think, how it happens. And it's so interesting that now when I go speak on campuses and I talk to young women about Girls Who Invest, I also talk to young men about Girls Who Invest, because they're going to be in our industry too. And I want them to take a leadership role at that age. I said, do you want to be the next Seth Klarman at Baupost or Howard Marks at Oaktree? Great. You should want to aspire to be great investors just like them. And you know what? Those great investors, they get it, right? They're embraced it. They're hiring all these women. They want to figure all this out. So why don't you start now? Engage with your classmates now and become peers and become supportive communities for each other. Do it now, because again, I feel like that's how we long-term fundamentally change this.
Well, there's a whole other podcast topic right there, but just sadly we don't have the time today. Well, thank you again. It's been a pleasure. I'm Aoife Devitt. Thank you for listening to the 50 Faces podcast. If you liked what you heard and would like to tune in to hear more inspiring investors and their personal journeys, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as investment advice, and all views are personal and should not be attributed to the organisations and affiliations of the host or any guest.